Hi there, everyone. I'm Mark Plunkett, the pastor of Heritage Presbyterian Church. This is our weekly devotional for the last week in September 2021. I want to talk about one of my favorite books in the Bible, the book of Job. Now, you might think, "Oh, Mark, that's got so much terrible stuff in it. How can that be your favorite book?" It's because it was taught by one of my very favorite professors when I was in seminary, a man named Dr. Seow. And it was the very first class that I took when I started going to seminary full time. No more night classes, no more summer classes, no more weekend classes, full time during the day like regular seminarians do. And this was the very first class that I went to on the book of Job, taught by Dr. Seow. He was one of the best teachers I've ever seen in any classroom, hands down. And he really made us get into the depth of the book of Job. He even called himself a Jobaholic. And he's written several books about all kinds of things. The book of Job, half of it, is something like this thick. He's got another book coming. So this man really, really knows the book of Job. And so I decided that today I was going to talk about it. One of the things that struck me in the book of Job was how terrible he was afflicted. He was a prosperous man. He had done everything right. He offered sacrifices to the Lord. Matter of fact, it even said he offered sacrifices on behalf of his children in case they sinned. So this was Job not just loving the Lord, but also making sure that his children were taken care of. So he prospered. Everything was good. Then God and the creature known as Hasatan. In the book, it's called Satan, but in the Hebrew scriptures and the way Dr. Seow pronounced it, Hasatan. So Hasatan was the challenger, the tempter, the deceiver, the devil, in other words. So Hasatan and the Lord had a conversation one day. And the Lord says, "Look at my servant Job. Isn't he wonderful? Look at all the things he does." And Hasatan says, "Oh, yeah, well, take away all his prosperity. And then let's say he'll curse you to your face." And God says, "Okay, you may not kill him, but take everything away from him." And so Job suffered. He lost everything. All his herds were slaughtered. His family was slaughtered. He was left covered in boils and sores and just sitting on the ground with a piece of pottery just scraping his miserable skin. And his wife even came and said, we always called her Mrs. Job, and she said, let's see, "Do you still persist in your integrity? Curse God and die." And that would kind of make sense. I mean, he's sitting there suffering. He's done all the right things. Even Mrs. Job knows it. And he says, "You are speaking like a fool. Shall we receive the good at the hand of God and not receive the bad?" In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. So even though everything was taken away from him and he was completely miserable, he would not raise his hand or his voice and curse God. He would not do it. Then the story changes. Then his three friends show up. They're actually called friends. But Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. And they show up to comfort and console Job. And when they see him from a distance and they see how miserable he is, this is what it said. They sat with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights. No one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his suffering was very great. So far, they sound like pretty good friends. They come to console him. They've heard terrible things have happened, and it's so bad they just sit with him. They don't even try to talk to him. They just sit with him and witness his agony. I mean, they're exhibiting what we would call the ministry of presence. You can't do anything, so you just sit with them and just be there. I've done this before. People that are so sick and dying, perhaps, there's nothing I can do except sit there and pray. And perhaps they did pray, but they were so horrified by what they saw, they sat there for 7 days. But then they started getting after Job. "Well, you must have done something. You must have done something. You couldn't have all this happen to you. God would not punish you if you hadn't done something. Now, you should confess what it is. Confess and tell us. Confess to the Lord, and perhaps he will spare you." And Job argued with them. "I haven't done anything. I haven't done anything. If I've done anything, name it. What have I done? I haven't done a thing wrong." And this goes on for 40 chapters. 40 chapters. It just goes on and 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 on. And finally, at the end, Job is restored. But the point is, his friends aren't quite so supportive now. Now they're more Come on, you did something. Say what it is. I say, if you have friends like this, who needs enemies? You're sitting there in your misery, in your pain, in your agony, not only in your body and your soul, but also your mind. And you got people saying, you did something. What did you do? You better confess. If you confess, maybe it'll get better for you. No. I can't stand it when people do that. Folks, that is not loving one another. That is not caring for one another. Are there times when you need to sit down and talk with a friend who's gone completely off the rails, who's doing the wrong thing, who's hit bottom, and you just got to sometimes kind of talk to them hard? Yes, true. But the saying also goes, read the room, pick your time. You don't just go after them in the midst of their misery. You got to wait for the right time. When Job was sitting there suffering, this was not the right time for his friends to suddenly accuse him. It's a very good lesson. The rest of Job, there's a lot to it and a lot to unpack and a lot that's very, very hard to understand. And you got to read one of Dr. Seow's big old thick books. Maybe that'll help you understand the whole book of Job a little bit better. But for this part right here, I think we've got it in a crystal clear way. Job's friends did not act like his friends. They fussed at him at a time they should have just loved him and listened to him. Maybe we should love and listen when our friends are in trouble. What do you think? Amen.